Hi guys, happy Friday. So today we're going to continue on with our lesson in chapter 7, section 1. We're going to be on page 420 in the textbook if you're following along. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a little homework review. And please make sure you guys are submitting your assignments, email them to me. When I receive them, I will be sending you guys a confirmation email. So that's how you know that I received it. So in the first problem, I gave you 13 to the 0 power. Remember, any number to the 0 power is going to be equal to 1. In 2, you guys got 5 to the negative 3. Well, when we have a negative exponent, what we got to do is that number or that variable, whatever's with that negative exponent, has to be dropped down into the denominator. So 5 to the negative 3 becomes 1 over 5 to the positive 3. And then we could go ahead and put 5 to the 3 in our calculator and we get 125. If your calculator doesn't have that little caret button that I showed you guys yesterday, what you would do is you would multiply 5 times itself 3 times. So you would do 5 times 5 and we get 25. And then 25 times 5 gives us 125. And what you don't have to do is when you put it in your calculator like this, you don't have to put 1 divided by 5 to the power of 3. Just keep the 1 in top and just evaluate what's down in the bottom, what's in the denominator. So just do 5 to the power of 3 and get 125, and your final answer is 1 over 125. For number 5, you got negative and then in parentheses 7 and to the negative 2. So what this means is because this negative is on the outside of the parentheses, the negative is not getting put to that negative 2 power. So the first step you would do is, because you have a negative 2 power, we don't like the negative, we got to drop it down into the denominator. So we get 1 over negative and then in parentheses 7 squared. Now, because the 7 is in parentheses, it is only the 7 that is getting to the second power, or the 7 that's getting squared. That negative is staying on the outside. Think of it as when we worked with absolute value, if the negative was on the outside of the absolute value bars, then the answer at the end would be negative. So here, negative's on the outside, keep it negative. So you're going to do 7 squared. So that's 7 times 7, and you get 1 over negative 49. And it's negative because, once again, that negative sign is not getting put to the second power because it is on the outside of the parentheses. In number 6, you guys got 46 to the negative 1. Well, we got a negative exponent. We got to put that in the denominator. So we're left with 1 over 46 to the first, and any number to the first power is itself, so we're left with 1 over 46. Now, if you guys are doing these in your calculator, you would just get a decimal, and to get the fraction back, all you would do is you would hit the math button and enter. So you would do math and then the enter button twice. Number 7, you guys had negative 6 to the 0 power. Well, any number to the 0 power is 1, and because there's a negative right there, it becomes negative 1. And in number 9, you have 1 over 8 to the 0 power. Any number to the 0 power is 1, so 8 to the 0 is 1, so you guys have 1 over 1, and 1 over 1 simplifies down to 1. In 13, now these are the trickier ones. So you have 3 times m to the negative 8 times p to the 0. Okay, so what we got to do is, we don't like that negative 8 power, so bring it down into the denominator. So we're left with 3 over m to the power of 8. If you're wondering, well, where did the p to the 0 go? Any number or anything to the 0 power is going to be 1. So I really didn't need to write 1 in, because 3 times 1, or all of this times 1, would still give us 3 over m to the 8. So it just kind of like disappears. So anytime you'll see like a variable to the 0 power, that's going to become 1. Hold that thought. Don't always eliminate it right away. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes later on in the lesson. But for right now, as long as I don't have you guys plugging in numbers, that can go away. And in 14, you have 5 times a to the negative 4 over 2c. So we don't like that negative 4 exponent in the top, so you got to bring it down into the denominator. So you're left with 5 over 2 times c times a to the 4th. Final answer, can't combine anything. That is it. And in 17, I gave you guys 8 to the negative 2, q to the 3, and r to the negative 5. So you have a negative 2 power and a negative 5 power. We don't like those. We don't like negative exponents. Bring them down into the denominator. So you're left with q to the 3 over 8 squared and r to the 5th. Okay, well, we could go ahead and simplify 8 squared. So we do 8 squared would give us 64. So your final answer is q to the 3rd over 64 r to the 5th power. So let's practice some more examples. I give you now 11 times x times y to the negative 1 times z to the 0, all divided by v to the negative 3. Okay. So now yesterday I showed you guys the longhand form where you gotta make it into a fraction, and then when you have a fraction in the denominator, you gotta multiply by the reciprocal. The easiest way I'm going to tell you guys to do this, there's like a little shortcut. This is what I do for myself. So, do you see how in the bottom we have this negative 3 power? Well, we're going to end up multiplying by the reciprocal, and that's going to become positive. So, now instead of having v to the negative 3 down here, shoot it up to the top and make it positive. As the second you bring it up to the top, it becomes positive. And then we have this y to the negative 1. So what you got to do is, we don't like the negative 1 in the top, so bring it down to the bottom, and the second we do that, it becomes positive. So what I just did was, I brought the v to the negative 3 up top, and it became a positive v to the 3rd. And then I had a y to the negative 1, and I brought it down into the denominator, and it just became y. Remember I told you yesterday, if there's no number there, it's understood to be 1. So your final answer would be 11x v to the 3 over y. We have negative 3 times k to the negative 3, and then in parentheses, m times n, all to the power of 3, divided by p to the negative 8. So when you have something in parentheses and an exponent on the outside of those parentheses, what you got to do is distribute that exponent to each of those numbers, each of those variables, or whatever's inside the parentheses next to it. So we're going to distribute this 3 to the m and the 3 to the n. So I went ahead and did that first. So I got negative 3 times k to the negative 3, m to the positive 3, and n to the positive 3. And it's still all over p to the negative 8. Now I got rid of this fraction, this parenthesis first, and then I'm going to worry about these negative exponents. So like that little trick I showed you, bring the p to the negative 8 up into the top and the k to the negative 3 down to the bottom. So you're now left with, and remember when we move it into the bottom or into the top, they now become positive. So we're left with 3 times p to the 8 times m to the 3 times n to the 3 all over k to the 3. Final answer, can't do anything, can't simplify it. You guys are done. Now we're going to try evaluating an exponential expression. So what you're going to be doing is you'll be plugging in for the variables and solving for the problems. Like we did earlier in the year when we had y equals, I don't know, x plus 7, and I said x is equal to, or find y when x is equal to whatever, and find x when y is equal to whatever. That's essentially what we're going to be doing here. But now we're going to have exponents attached to it. Oh, look at that. So this is Ginger. I believe I might have introduced her to you guys before. I'm not sure. Ginger's our neighbor's, it's our next door neighbor's dog. She just happens to think she lives at our house. She likes to come over a lot. Sometimes she knows we have a full stash of her milk bones here, so she likes to come and get a treat every once in a while, then darts right back out our front door and goes back to her house. Well, the other night she decided to come over and we were having some vanilla bean ice cream, and Ginger decided, hey, I need a snack too. So there was a little left, so we let her have the leftover vanilla bean ice cream. So for you guys, if you're watching and following along, so your extra credit assignment for this marking period is to send me an email what Ginger was eating in the lessons for today. Okay, bye, Ginger. See you. Hopefully I'll send you some. We'll be seeing more of Ginger throughout the rest of the school year. So let's try this. So we're going to evaluate exponential expressions. So now I'm going to give you a value for the variables, and you're going to plug in and we're going to evaluate. So I want to know, what is the value of 3 times s to the third times t to the negative 2 when s is equal to 2 and t is equal to negative 3. Now there's a number of ways you could go ahead and solve it. I'm going to show you guys the way I think is the easiest to do. Like you can plug in for s and you can plug in for t. I think the easiest thing when you have these negative exponents over here is to get rid of that negative exponent first and then go ahead and plug in. It just kind of makes it a little more organized. So 3s cubed, anything to the third power is cubed. So if you hear me say cubed, that means I'm saying it's to the third power. So 3s cubed times t to the negative 2. Okay. Remember, we don't like that negative exponent. The easy trick, whenever you see a negative exponent in the numerator, drop it down into the denominator and it becomes positive. If there's no fraction, now you make it a fraction. So this now becomes 3s cubed over t squared. Your next step is to plug in for s and plug in for t. Well, s is equal to 2, so I plugged in 2 for s, and t is equal to negative 3, so I plugged in negative 3 for t. So what's important here to know is, remember, we got to remember PEMDAS, parentheses exponents, multiplication, division, yada, yada, yada. We don't multiply 3 times 2 first. We do 2 to the 3 first. So we do 2 times 2 times 2. And we get 8. Now we can go ahead and then multiply 3 times 8. And then over here, remember I told you if it's inside parentheses, it's included when we square it. I'm sorry about that. It's included when we square it. So down here, I made a little mistake. I forgot to take away that negative sign. So you should have 3 times 8 over, this should be a positive 9, not a negative 9. And then we get 24 over positive 9, not negative 9. And that can simplify down to 8/3. Positive 8/3, not negative 8/3. I made a little mistake. Sorry about that, guys. And another example. We have 1 over n times w to the negative 1. And I'm going to tell you n is equal to negative 2 and w is equal to 5. Okay. First thing, we don't like that -1 in the denominator, so we got to make it positive. So bring it up to the top. So now we're left with w to the first over n. We go ahead and plug in. So w is equal to 5, so we plug in 5 for w and -2 for n. And 5 to the first power gives us 5, and -2 just stays in the denominator. So our final answer is 5 over -2. Now let's try this one. We have 2 to the -4 times r cubed times s to the -2 times r. And it's, let me say that again. 2 to the -4, r to the third, s to the -2, and r is equal to -3, and s is equal to 5. Okay. First thing, get rid of those negative exponents. So we're going to bring this 2 to the -4 down into the denominator, and s to the -2 into the denominator. So we're left with r to the third over 2 to the fourth s squared. Okay, now you could go ahead and plug in. So we have -3 to the third over 4 squared, 2 to the fourth, and 5 squared. So -3 cubed is -27. 2 to the fourth gives us 16, and 5 squared gives us 25. So we go ahead and multiply. 16 times 25 gives us 400, and we keep the -27 in the top. This does not simplify down to anything, so your final answer is -27 over 400. I'm going to leave you guys off with this. A negative number to an even exponent, or an even power, is going to end up becoming positive, because think about it this way. If you had a -2 squared, -2 times -2 gives you +4. Anytime you have a negative number to an odd power, it's going to be negative. -2 to the third. -2 times -2 gives you +4. Now you have to do +4 times -2 gives you -8. So that becomes negative. Anytime, think about this. Negative number to even is going to become positive. Negative number to odd gives you negative. So guys, I hope you have a relaxing weekend. Enjoy it. And I can't wait to see you guys all soon. Have a great weekend, guys.